Hello and welcome to Lux Digital Church, and welcome to our very first Easter video. Where we left off earlier this week, we had service on Wednesday night. By the way, there's service every Wednesday night for Lux Digital Church at twitch.tv/Lux Digital Church at 8:30 p.m. EST on Wednesday nights, and we'd love to have you come and join us there. But we went through the Easter story, or better yet, we actually left off at Good Friday. And during that video, I did promise and tell you that we were going to have an Easter video here that was going to be released on YouTube for the Lux family to be able to watch on Easter Sunday. And today's video is entitled Three Things, that's three fingers, Three Things You May Have Missed in the Easter story. Three things you may have missed in the Easter story. Before I dive into any of that, I do want to pick up where we left off in the scriptures. In the scriptures, we left off with Jesus being nailed to the cross and dying at a place called Golgotha. After that, he was taken away to a man's tomb. It was a new tomb, and he was laid in there fresh. Not like fresh as in his body was fresh, although I'm sure that it was. What I mean is there was no other people in the tomb. It was a brand new tomb. And we pick up with the story in Matthew chapter 28, the final chapter of Matthew's gospel. It says this: early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. When the angel spoke to the women, "Don't be afraid," he said. "I know you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come see where his body is lying, and now go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. He is going ahead of you to Galilee, and you will see him there. Remember what I have told you." The women ran quickly from the tomb. They were very frightened, but also filled with great joy. And they rushed to give the disciples the angel's message. As they went, Jesus met with them and greeted them. And they ran to him, grabbed his feet, and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there." Matthew chapter 28. Verses 1 through 10. The first thing in the Easter story that you may have missed was through this, Jesus displays and shows very clearly the importance of women in his redemptive mission on earth. Very specifically, Jesus chose to reveal himself first to Mary and Mary, two women. Now, in ancient times, women held very little rights at all. They were little more than possessions. In fact, at this given moment in Israel's history, it was okay for a man to give a woman a written notice of divorce, no matter what she had done, and simply send her away. A woman that was divorced rarely was able to get remarried, and she typically had one of three options. She could beg, she could sell her own body to other men, or she could glean, which means that she could go along and pick up what was left over in fields after the harvesters had gone through the fields. Very little options for a woman in that time. A woman wasn't able to testify in a court of law. She wasn't considered trustworthy enough. Women weren't educated. They weren't allowed to be teachers, and most men weren't even allowed to talk to them. Yet Jesus returns from the dead in this new flesh, and when he returns, he actually meets with women and speaks to women as a rabbi, something completely unheard of, showing the very first people to know and to be able to declare that the Messiah was risen and that he was indeed the Son of God, and he didn't just die like everyone thought that he had died, was women. Women are central to God's redemptive mission on earth. The second thing that we want to look at is that Jesus didn't actually look like Jesus. Where do I get that from? This actually comes to us from the book of John, another gospel that records what had happened when Jesus returned. It says, Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear women, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there, It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear women, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you had taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." Mary, Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which in Hebrew means teacher. John chapter 20, verses 11 through 16. Here we see that Jesus didn't look necessarily like we thought he did. He didn't look like himself. Mary had known Jesus. She had followed Jesus. She was one of the first people to be able to declare that Jesus had risen from the dead. Yet when she saw him, she thought he was a gardener. This shows that when Jesus returned in a new body, he didn't look like the old Jesus. He looked completely different. Yet he revealed himself to her. And through her faith, she was able to see with new eyes that he truly was the Jesus that she had followed, the Son of God. In a very similar fashion, for each of us, it requires faith to follow Jesus. It requires faith to step out and accept him as Lord and Savior of our lives. He may not look exactly like what we thought, but when Jesus says her name, she sees him for who he is. There's other disciples who saw Jesus for the first time and didn't recognize him. They didn't believe it was him. And even the day that he ascended back into heaven, there were still disciples who doubted. The Bible teaches us that by our faith, we will see. And it was by Mary's faith that she saw. And in the same way, it is by our faith that we see Jesus for who he is. The third and final thing that you may have missed in the Easter narrative is this. Jesus predicted his death and resurrection, and then he pulled it off. Let's look at another passage, this one from the book of Matthew, starting in chapter 16. It says this, "From then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hand of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day, he would be raised from the dead." This is actually just from one verse, Matthew chapter 16, verse number 21. Here at Lux, we believe that if someone is able to predict their death and resurrection and then pull it off, that's somebody that we should follow. It's someone that we should listen to. And so we follow Jesus with everything we are here at Lux. Because not only did Jesus predict that he would die and that 3 days later he would be raised to life, he actually did it. If I was to tell you the day that I was going to die, it might be impressive. And if I was going to tell you that I was going to come back to life 3 days later, you might find that funny. But if I did it, it would be beyond miraculous. And so here at Lux, if someone can predict their own death and their resurrection and pull it off, we just go with what that guy says. And if you're in that same place and you're ready to choose to follow Jesus, Jesus called people to follow him all the time. And when they did, they would walk away from everything else and follow him. And in a similar fashion, he's making the same call to your life, to follow him. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to sell everything that you have and going to follow around a Jesus around the countryside like many of the disciples did. But it does mean a complete and total reorientation of your life. It means something brand new. And if you're ready to make that commitment today, we want to come alongside you and help you do that. There's only one link in this video, and it's going to take you to an I Committed page on our website. If you give us some basic information, your email, your name, or your Discord ID, and let us know that you're out there and that you're choosing to follow Jesus with your life, we want to come alongside you. Because when you're doing something like this, it's good to have people to come alongside you who have done it longer and who've gone farther, can help you avoid some of the pitfalls and encourage you during some of the difficult times. So if you're making that decision today, this Easter morning, to follow Jesus, we want to celebrate with you and we want to help you do it. Use that link in the description of this video and come become part of our Lux Digital Church family. Thanks so much for watching. Have a happy Easter. I hope you guys have a great holiday. And if you're watching this after Easter, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you online.